The sound of laughter still echoes in my mind. 7 years ago they laughed. My college friends, my family, even my own boyfriend. They all laughed when I told them I was enlisting in the army. "Sarah's playing soldier," they said. "She'll be back in 6 months crying." But today I stand here with something they never imagined possible. Something that changed everything. Something that made every single person who ever doubted me fall completely silent. Today, the President of the United States handed me the key to the nation's most classified operation. And those same people who laughed, they watched it happen, live on television. This is my story. This is how the girl they called weak became the woman who holds America's deepest secrets. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I've always been invisible. Growing up in suburban Denver, I was the quiet girl in the corner. Average height, average looks, average grades. Nothing about me screamed special. My friends were cheerleaders, homecoming queens, girls who turned heads when they walked into rooms. I was just there. My father left when I was 12. My mother worked double shifts at the hospital just to keep our small house. While other kids had birthday parties and family vacations, I had quiet Saturday mornings helping Mom pay bills. In college, things didn't change much. While my sorority sisters planned weddings and talked about marrying rich men, I spent nights in the library, not because I was particularly smart, but because I was searching for something: purpose, direction, a reason to wake up in the morning. I remember the exact moment everything changed. It was a Tuesday night, and I was alone in the library again. Everyone else was at a fraternity party. I was researching for a paper when I clicked on a documentary link by accident. Women Warriors, the untold stories of female soldiers. For 2 hours, I watched women my age talking about serving their country. They spoke about finding strength they never knew they had, about being part of something greater than themselves. Something inside me awakened. The night I announced my decision, we were at Jessica's engagement party. The garden was filled with white roses and fairy lights. Everyone was celebrating love, future, happiness. I had been sitting quietly at the corner table, watching my friends laugh and dance, feeling like an outsider in my own life. That's when I stood up, my hands shaking. "I have an announcement too," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. 20 pairs of eyes turned to me. "I'm enlisting in the army." The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then came the laughter. "Sarah, honey," Jessica giggled, nearly choking on her champagne. "You can barely open a pickle jar." "The military? Are you serious?" Marcus, my boyfriend of 2 years, looked mortified. "She's just going through a phase. You know how Sarah gets these random ideas." "Sarah," my sorority sister Amanda chimed in, "you do realize they make you exercise, right? Like actual physical exercise. Every day." More laughter rippled through the group. My mother leaned forward with tears in her eyes. "But Sarah," she whispered, "what will people think? Military service is for different kinds of girls." Different kinds of girls. That phrase burned into my soul like a brand. "What kind of girl am I, Mom?" I asked quietly. She couldn't answer. Marcus grabbed my arm. "Babe, you're embarrassing yourself. And me. Can we please just drop this?" I looked around the table at these people I had called friends for years. Their faces were a mixture of amusement and pity. "You're right," I said finally, standing up. "I am different." That night, I went home and cried until my pillow was soaked. But when morning came, I walked into the recruitment office with my head held high. The recruiter, Sergeant Rodriguez, was a woman about my age with kind eyes and calloused hands. "What brings you here today, miss?" she asked. "Everyone thinks I'm weak," I said simply. "I want to prove them wrong." She smiled. "Honey, if you're here to prove something to other people, you're here for the wrong reasons. But if you're here to prove something to yourself, then we might have something to talk about." Basic training at Fort Benning was hell. The first morning, at 4:30 a.m., Drill Sergeant Williams stood at the foot of my bunk screaming at a volume I didn't know human voices could reach. "Mitchell! What do you think this is? Summer camp? Get up!" My hands were shaking as I tried to make my bed with military precision. The corners weren't tight enough. The blanket wasn't straight enough. Nothing was ever good enough. The obstacle courses were brutal. Crawling through mud under barbed wire while drill sergeants threw smoke grenades. Climbing ropes that seemed to stretch to the sky. Running 5 miles in Georgia heat until I thought my lungs would burst. My hands bled from the monkey bars. My legs cramped during long marches. Some nights, I collapsed into my bunk feeling like I might not survive another day. The other recruits were different from me. Many came from military families. They belonged here in a way I never felt I did. During our first week, I overheard 2 of them talking after lights out. "That Mitchell girl," one whispered. "She's not going to make it. Look at her. She's soft." "City girl," the other agreed. "Probably never worked a day in her life." But I stayed. Every morning when that whistle blew, I got up. Every time they screamed at me, I stood straighter. Every time I wanted to quit, I remembered the laughter at Jessica's party. While my friends posted Instagram photos from beach vacations and brunch dates, I posted nothing. My social media went dark. They thought I had disappeared, given up, admitted defeat. Marcus stopped calling after the 3rd week. His final text message was brutal. "I can't date someone who thinks she's G.I. Jane. This is embarrassing. We're done." I read that message while sitting in the barracks, my body aching from a 15-mile march, my hands wrapped in bandages, and I smiled, because for the first time in my life, I was becoming someone I respected. What they didn't know was that I had scored in the top percentile on every aptitude test the Army gave me: intelligence analysis, strategic thinking, pattern recognition. Skills I never knew I possessed were suddenly being measured and developed. 6 months into my service, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with an official seal I didn't recognize. "Specialist Mitchell," it read, "you are invited to apply for a specialized program. If selected, you will be required to serve an additional 4 years beyond your current commitment. This program is classified at the highest levels." At the bottom was a phone number. I stared at that paper for 2 days. On the 3rd day, I made the call. The selection process was unlike anything I had ever experienced. I was flown to a facility I couldn't name in a state I couldn't identify. For 3 days, I underwent tests that pushed me beyond every limit I thought I had. Psychological evaluations that lasted 12 hours at a time. They showed me images designed to break my concentration. They asked me questions about my childhood, my fears, my deepest secrets. Physical tests that made basic training look like a warm-up. Obstacle courses in complete darkness. Swimming fully clothed in ice-cold water. But the hardest part was the isolation test. 24 hours alone in a windowless room with nothing but a chair and a cup of water. No books, no clock, no human contact. Many people broke during that test. I could hear them crying, begging to be let out. But I had spent my whole life feeling invisible, being alone. This was just another Tuesday for me. On the final day, I sat across from a panel of 3 people whose faces I couldn't see clearly. "Why do you want this, Specialist Mitchell?" asked a voice I couldn't identify. "Because I want to matter," I said honestly. "I want to serve something bigger than myself. And I want to prove that the quiet girl in the corner might be exactly what you need." 2 weeks later, I received another unmarked envelope. Inside was a single word: accepted. Out of 500 applicants, only 12 were chosen. I was one of them. For the next 4 years, I became a ghost. My friends and family knew I was somewhere in the military, but they didn't know where. They received carefully crafted postcards from generic military bases. They got phone calls on holidays where I sounded tired but couldn't explain why. They didn't know that I had been selected for the most elite intelligence program in American history. They didn't know that I was training alongside Navy SEALs, CIA operatives, and former Special Forces soldiers. The program was called Project Sentinel. Our mission: to become the nation's last line of defense against threats that conventional military couldn't handle. I learned to speak fluent Mandarin in 6 months, Russian in 8. Arabic took me a year, but I could pass for a native speaker in 3 different dialects. The technology training was like living in a science fiction movie. I learned to hack into systems that governments thought were impenetrable. I studied facial recognition software so advanced it could identify someone from a partial image taken in poor lighting. But the psychological training was what truly transformed me. I learned to read people like books. A slight change in breathing patterns meant deception. A particular way of holding their shoulders indicated stress. Most importantly, I learned to disappear. To be so unremarkable, so invisible, that I could walk into any room in the world and gather intelligence without anyone suspecting who I really was. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same invisibility that had made me insignificant in civilian life made me invaluable as an operative. My first real mission came 18 months into the program. I was sent to a tech conference in San Francisco to monitor a group of foreign nationals suspected of stealing classified information. For 3 days, I was just another quiet woman in business attire, but I identified the entire spy network, recorded their conversations, and provided intelligence that led to their arrest. My handler's only comment was, "Good work, Agent Mitchell." Agent Mitchell, not specialist, not recruit, agent. During those 4 years, I came home for holidays and family gatherings. My relatives would ask polite questions about my army job, clearly bored by what they assumed was mundane military service. "How's the whole soldier thing going?" Jessica would ask with a patronizing smile. "It's fine," I would answer. "Just doing my job." If only they knew that my job had included infiltrating terrorist cells, preventing cyber attacks on the Pentagon, and personally briefing the Secretary of Defense on threats to national security. If only they knew that 3 separate times, information I had gathered had prevented attacks that would have killed thousands of Americans. But I smiled and nodded, playing the role of their unremarkable Sarah, the girl who was playing soldier. It was a Tuesday morning when everything changed. I was in my apartment in Virginia, having coffee and reading intelligence reports on my encrypted tablet, when my secure phone rang. "Agent Mitchell, you're needed at the White House." Immediately. The White House. In 4 years of classified operations, I had never been called there. An hour later, I was sitting in the Situation Room with the President, the Secretary of Defense, the CIA Director, and 3 other officials whose titles I couldn't repeat. "Agent Mitchell," the President said, his voice heavy with gravity, "we have a situation. A threat to national security unlike anything we've faced before. Our intelligence indicates that a coordinated attack on American soil is imminent. Multiple targets. Thousands of lives at stake." The Secretary of Defense leaned forward. "We're talking about simultaneous strikes on critical infrastructure. Power grids, water systems, communication networks. If successful, it would cripple the country for months." The President slid a folder across the table. "We need our best operative to lead the counterintelligence effort. The person we choose will have access to every classified operation, every state secret, every piece of intelligence that America possesses." I opened the folder. Inside was a single document with my photograph and a title that made my breath catch: Director of National Intelligence Coordination. "We're choosing you, Agent Mitchell. You will have complete authority over this operation. You will report directly to me. And tomorrow, at the Medal of Honor ceremony, I will be presenting you with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor this nation can bestow." The room was silent, except for the sound of my heart pounding. "The ceremony will be televised," he continued. "Your cover will be blown, but it's necessary. The American people need to know that we have someone like you protecting them. Someone like me, the invisible girl, the one they had all underestimated." The next morning, I stood in my childhood bedroom, putting on my dress uniform for what I knew would be the last time as an unknown soldier. I had driven to Denver the night before, telling my mother I had a few days of leave. She was thrilled to see me, but still had that slightly embarrassed look she got whenever neighbors asked about my military career. My dress uniform hung on the closet door, the same uniform I had worn at basic training graduation, when only my mother had come to watch. The ceremony was held in the East Room of the White House. Cameras from every major network were present. I had made sure that everyone from my past would be watching. As I stood at attention, waiting for my name to be called, I thought about all the times I had been dismissed, overlooked, forgotten, all the times I had smiled and nodded while they assumed I was nothing special. "Ladies and gentlemen," the President began, his voice carrying across the room and into millions of homes across America. "Today we honor individuals who have shown extraordinary service to our nation. These heroes have often worked in shadow, their sacrifices unknown to the very people they protect." My heart was pounding. The Presidential Medal of Freedom is our nation's highest civilian honor. Today, I present it to Agent Sarah Mitchell, whose intelligence work over the past 4 years has prevented 3 major terrorist attacks on American soil, dismantled 2 international spy networks, and saved countless American lives. The room erupted in applause, but I could barely hear it over the blood rushing in my ears. "Agent Mitchell," the President continued, "has been operating under the deepest classification levels, known only to a select few. Today, we reveal her service to the American people because her next assignment requires it. Effective immediately, Agent Mitchell will serve as Director of National Intelligence Coordination, making her one of the most powerful people in American government. As he placed the medal around my neck, cameras flashed and the audience rose to their feet. But all I could think about was my phone, which I knew was exploding with messages from people who had just realized that the girl they had mocked was now one of the most important people in the country. Within hours, news outlets were running feature stories about my background, from small-town girl to national security leader, the invisible operative who protected America. My phone rang constantly. Text messages poured in from numbers I hadn't seen in years. Jessica's message came first. "Sarah, I can't believe. I had no idea. I'm so sorry for everything I said." Then Marcus, "I saw the news. I've been such an idiot. You're incredible." But the most meaningful message came from my mother. "Sweetheart," she said when I finally answered her call, "I've been crying for hours. Not because I'm sad, but because I'm so proud and so ashamed at the same time. I raised a daughter who became a hero, and I never even saw it." Her voice broke. "Can you ever forgive me for not believing in you?" 6 months later, I stood in my office at the Pentagon, looking out at the Washington skyline. My title was Director of National Intelligence Coordination, but my real job was simpler. I was the person America called when everything else failed. The girl who had been invisible was now one of the most visible people in government. My security detail followed me everywhere. My decisions affected millions of lives. World leaders knew my name. But the most surprising change wasn't professional. It was personal. I had learned to see my invisibility as a gift, not a curse. All those years of being overlooked had taught me to observe, to listen, to understand people in ways that natural leaders never could. The people from my past still reached out occasionally. Jessica invited me to every social event she hosted, proud to tell people she was friends with Sarah Mitchell from the Pentagon. Marcus tried to rekindle our relationship, convinced that we were meant to be, but I had changed too much to go back. A year after the ceremony, I was invited back to my college for commencement. They wanted me to be the keynote speaker. Standing at the podium, looking out at hundreds of young faces, I saw myself 7 years earlier. "When I was your age," I began, "I was told that I wasn't special, that I was average, that I would never amount to anything significant." The audience was silent. They were wrong, but not for the reasons you might think. They were wrong because they didn't understand that significance isn't about being seen. It's about seeing. It's not about being heard. It's about listening. After the ceremony, a young woman approached me. She was quiet, unremarkable, easily overlooked. "Ms. Mitchell," she said softly, "your story gives me hope. I've always felt invisible." I smiled, seeing myself in her eyes. "Being invisible," I told her, "isn't your weakness. It's your superpower. The world needs people who can see what others miss." Today, 3 years after that ceremony, I still think about the laughter, not with anger or resentment, but with gratitude. Every person who underestimated me played a role in creating the person I became. Their laughter taught me that other people's opinions are just noise. Their doubt showed me that the only validation that matters comes from within. I keep a photo on my desk from Jessica's engagement party, the night I announced my enlistment. In the picture, everyone is laughing. Everyone except me. I'm looking directly at the camera with quiet determination. That girl knew something the others didn't. She knew that she was about to embark on a journey that would transform her from invisible to indispensable. Last week, I received another classified briefing about another threat to our nation. As I read through the intelligence reports, prepared to make decisions that would affect millions of people, I smiled thinking about that girl they all underestimated. She would be proud of who we became. The invisible girl who learned to see everything. The quiet girl who found her voice in service. The unremarkable girl who became irreplaceable. They laughed at my training. They mocked my dreams. They underestimated my potential. But when the president handed me the key to the nation's most important secrets, when I became one of the most powerful people in America, when their laughter turned to stunned silence, that was my final revelation. And it was worth every moment of doubt, every tear. Every night I wondered if I was strong enough to continue. Because I wasn't just strong enough. I was exactly what America needed. I was exactly who I was meant to be. The girl they never saw coming. Sometimes the people who laugh the loudest are the ones who understand the least. Sometimes the person everyone overlooks is exactly the person everyone needs. I learned that being underestimated isn't an insult, it's an advantage. And sometimes, the greatest revelation isn't proving them wrong, it's proving yourself right. Sharing my story with you today brought back so many memories. The tears, the doubt, the moments when I almost gave up, but also the strength I found in the darkest places, the power I discovered in being invisible. If my story touched something inside you, if you see yourself in that quiet girl who was always overlooked, then I want you to know something important. You're not alone. There are others like us, others who understand what it feels like to be underestimated, to have dreams that seem impossible. I've learned that the most powerful revelations often happen to people who feel forgotten by the world. And I believe your moment is coming too. Most people will scroll past this story and forget it by tomorrow. Most won't take even the smallest step to stay connected to these moments of truth. But you're different, aren't you? You listened to my entire journey. You felt what I felt. If you want to hear more stories like mine, stories of people who were dismissed until the world discovered who they really were, all you have to do is subscribe. It's the only help I need, and it doesn't cost you anything. Just one small click. Because somewhere out there is someone just like I used to be. Someone invisible. Someone underestimated. Someone whose final revelation is waiting to happen. And maybe, just maybe, these stories will be the spark that reminds them of their own hidden power. The choice is yours. But remember, every hero's journey starts with someone who believes the story is worth following. Will you be one of the few who stays for the next revelation?